Welcome to the Underscore Transformation Podcast. My name is Joe Ailes.
And my name is Jason West.
And together we're the founders of Underscore. In Season 2, we're focusing on implementation and the challenges that surround designing, building, and testing your business transformation. So in today's episode, we consider the integrated team of suppliers that are involved in delivering a transformation and a common trait of transformation programs that get into difficulty is the misunderstanding and confusion surrounding the roles of the internal program team, external management consultants, maybe client-side advisors, technology vendors, and system implementation partners. So, Jason, how do we avoid misunderstandings and stop ourselves reaching for our lawyer friends at the first signs of trouble?
It's a good question. If you're calling the lawyers, then you're in real trouble.
Yes.
So, unsurprisingly, it starts with scoping the program correctly. And as we talk through this build phase, we will keep referring back to scoping because you get the scoping right, and the build is significantly easier. So during that scoping work, you really should have already mapped out the various parties that are going to be involved at the various stages of your program. And being clear about who's responsible, accountable, consulted and informed at each of those critical steps. And wherever humanly possible, you should always make sure that those RACI are absolutely defined within the contracts that you have with your suppliers. So you have statements of work that clearly define who is responsible and accountable for each of the various activities that your integrated team is going to fulfill together. So that's kind of the contractual side, and you really need to have kind of sorted that out before you get to kicking off your implementation. But on that point, before you involve a wider group of people in a kickoff, a launch of your transformation program, you really do want to get your integrated program team together. So the team of your internal project team members, any systems integrator, technology vendor, management consultants, external advisors, anybody that's going to be part of this integrated team with a role to play, you want to get them in the same room at the same time. Now, this might mean flying people in from other countries, but getting them together right at the beginning and being really clear with them about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and really stepping through that RACI to be clear about who's doing what, make sure there aren't any confusions, any overlaps, stuff doesn't fall between the cracks of these different teams is absolutely key.
Yeah. So in last week's episode, actually, we made reference to this in the making sure that people don't misunderstand the roles and responsibilities of the systems integrators and those that are making design decisions. So it is important to have at the very beginning, at the very outset, clarity about who's responsible for what, so that there is no ambiguity.
Yes.
And when inevitably you're going to have some difficult conversations along the way because these things are never plain sailing.
Yeah, and on that point, as you go through these programs, at times things get a bit difficult. Relationships can get strained, and investing the time up front by getting people together and agreeing not just who does what, but that's important, obviously, but also how we're going to work together.
Yeah,
because this is a team of individuals. At the end of the day, they work for different organisations. They've got their own personal objectives, their own commercial drivers, but they're working together towards a common goal. Yeah. Well, you certainly hope they are.
Yeah.
But investing the time up front to make sure that we agree together, what are we doing, why are we doing it, where are we going, how are we going to get there, who's going to do what, but also how are we going to treat each other, behave, how are we going to work together, and getting that formed up into a team charter, a set of green card, red card type behaviours.
That's worked well. Yeah,
absolutely. Because you do have these different priorities, these different drivers, and starting to tease some of that out up front and get to that common understanding and then agreed way of working will make it infinitely easier. as you're on a call at 11 o'clock at night, deep into the heart of testing, and you've got somebody that's desperately trying to fix a problem halfway around the world on something that you need to sign off or go live with or whatever it might be. The fact that you've sat down together, you've met face to face, that you've agreed where you're going, why you're going there, and have some fun.
Yeah. And the point is, this is really, really important in twofold. One is to understand the roles and responsibilities and make sure that there is no ambiguity in terms of like what am I here to do, and what are they here to do?
Yes.
But the second point actually is one of collaboration, isn't it? This is an integrated program team. For the program to be successful, every single component of it, every single element of it needs to sort of be facing in the same direction and working to the same goals.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is not, if you start to develop a relationship, or not a relationship, if you start to develop a them and us culture among the program team, you're on bad grounds, on terrible footing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everyone will be watching their backs.
Yes, yeah. And there's some really good frameworks out there around collaboration. So there's the relatively new ISO 44001 to get the kind of very structured around it.
As well researched there, Jason. Well done.
Absolutely. Just looked it up. It's actually pretty good.
It is really, really good.
Some useful stuff in there that's worth having a look at. But we've talked about in the first episode of this season the work you need to do around resourcing your program and documenting roles and responsibilities and why that's important. I think at this stage it becomes really important because before somebody that you second onto the program into a subject matter expert role or a process owner role or whatever it might be, before they can really start to understand, well, what's the role of the system integrator versus the technology vendor versus this management consultant, they need to understand their role first. They're not going to be in the right headspace to really get what are all these different people doing? Well, what am I doing? And so start with the individual, get them comfortable first. So before you get to that kickoff meeting, you really do want to have sat down with each of the individuals and made sure they're clear on their role. So they can devote the time when they're together with these other people to forming relationships and actually forming up as a team, rather than sat there worrying about, well, what does this mean for me? Well, what am I going to do?
And equally importantly is the establishing at the very outset, people that are brought into the program, seconded into the program, they haven't been involved in those relationships, maybe in the vendor selection processes. They haven't established those relationships with those vendors. Because it's not, this is not the first time that the vendor would have met with that organization. It would have been a process. There would have been a procurement process way back when, that members of the program team will have created strong relationships with. And when you second individuals into projects for the first time, this is the first time that they see the whites of the eyes of the people that are going to help their organization achieve their goals. Yeah. So you need to invest time and effort in building a culture and environment of trust and collaboration and friendliness among them.
A truly integrated team, and spending time on forming this group of disparate individuals from different companies together as a properly integrated team that share common goals, objectives, and ways of working. Yeah. Get that right up front, and life becomes a heck of a lot easier. That's probably one of the first things you can do to not have to reach into the drawer and start pulling out contracts to beat up a supplier with. The other side to it is, great, you do that work up front, but you have to keep working it. And either the transformation lead or the program director, program manager, combination of the two really, need to work hard on monitoring individuals' understandings, not just within your internal program team, but the understanding, the expectations, the behaviours of the integrated program team, and where required, they're going to need to take intervention steps. Maybe it's a particular individual in one supplier that's kind of going
Veering
off a bit,
off track,
a bit of an odd direction.
Yeah.
You need to manage that in the right way, in the ways that you've agreed with that supplier's project manager, management chain, whatever it is, how you're going to deal with these sorts of issues. But making sure those misunderstandings don't start creeping in and stuff does fall between the gaps. So I think that constant checking in and management of the individuals and the team as being an important focus, as well as on the task at hand. It's very easy for program teams to become incredibly task focused, incredibly outcome focused, and they kind of forget the people elements of it.
Yeah.
So we held our kickoff. We're managing the individuals and the team, but we really do need to think a bit more about structure. What are the kind of key groups of individuals and suppliers that make up an integrated program team?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you've got your internal program team.
Yeah.
And we've talked at length in previous episodes about what those roles are. Work stream leads and process owners, etc. All of that needs to be documented. There needs to be clarity as to who is accountable for making what decisions, because the suppliers, the vendors, they are ultimately producing something for you. They need to know who to turn to when they need some light.
Yes.
Then you've got other groups of people, and depending on the size of your program that you may draw on. So management consultancies, for instance. And interestingly, many of the management consultancies out there have got capability on both the system integration space, so making configuration changes to products, but also they've got experience in change management and program management and fulfilling the role that perhaps should sit client side. So they've got capability in that, and it's really, really important that clients that engage, the big four or the big consulting firms to execute the system implementation for them, that they're very, very clear in terms of what role are they there to fulfill. So
yes, because the role of management consultants really should be in that kind of advisory guidance and helping you define the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So bringing in people with expertise in your corporate function, whatever that might be, helping, they're there to help you define the strategy, but it's your decision what your strategy is. No external person's going to tell you what it should be.
If they are, you shouldn't accept it. You should make sure it's you're accountable.
Some warning bells should be going off.
Exactly.
But they're also there to help you work through your target operating model design.
Yeah.
And how that fits into the overarching enterprise architecture. And like you say, bringing in that best practice insight, recommendations, and they do and can play an active role in change management, as you say. But it's not just the big four. There's a wealth of specialist boutique firms out there that, some focus just on strategy, some just on target operating model design, some just on one functional area or the other. There's lots of different ways of cutting that up. But that role of management consultant, for want of a better term, could be fulfilled by a senior interim or an experienced contractor.
Yeah, somebody who's been there, done it,
that's got the experience of running these types of processes. I think it's probably just worth thinking through that we've talked quite a lot about the solution design accountabilities within the internal program team, but it's more than just making design decisions, isn't it? The program team's there ultimately to make sure you deliver the benefits and the committed business case, but that also involves some technical stuff as well, because it's your internal team that need to ensure that whatever gets created is fully tested, that it's been validated as meeting business requirements. So it's not just verified that, yes, it meets these specifications, but it's validated that, it's fit for purpose. That any change, that any business change, people change, has been effectively delivered, that people are adopting new ways of working. And then right at the upfront, it's the internal program team that's often accountable for extracting data from current systems, cleansing it, transforming it, and then loading it into whatever your new technology is. So there's actually an awful lot of responsibility and accountability and work that sits on the internal program team side. And I think where organizations can get into trouble is where they expect that a lot of that work is what the implementation partner is there to do.
Yeah.
And they don't adequately resource the internal program team. And they assume that just seconding some people in that are experts in procure to pay and or order to cash or whatever it might be, benefits, just getting those subject matter experts in is enough. That they don't need to worry too much about, sort of data analysts and business analysts and testers and test managers and all this other stuff. But that accountability sits with the client.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you think about it, most of the accountability of delivering and executing the program sits with that on client side.
Yeah.
So if we look at in its broadest sense, the client is expected to deliver data in a format that is transformable into the destination system that's being procured.
Yeah.
So that's, and it's the responsibility of the client to make sure that that data is of good quality. So an awful lot of work needs to be done around data quality and so on. It's the client's responsibility to make the design decisions. So that's where we talked a little bit about advisors and interims and people that have been there and done it to come in and help the client make sensible design decisions, because those implementation partners are there to receive instruction about what the client wants. They can provide options, but that's where their responsibility, the accountability stops.
Yes, yeah.
The other one is, again, delivering a technology solution. They are not the system integrators or the systems partners. They're not going to sit there and give you a testing strategy. You've got to create a testing strategy yourself. And you have got to test it yourself. They will do their own testing to make sure that the configuration that they've built has been done well. But ultimately, it's your responsibility on the client side to make sure that you've tested the system or the process, the tool, whatever you've acquired or implementing to death.
Yes.
Again, it's change management. It's not the system implementer's responsibility. It's client-side responsibility to do that.
I think one that often gets confused is around integrating your new system into the rest of the architecture. So often the implementation partner is there to build an interface out of their system
or into it,
but they're going from their system out. For example, if it's an outbound, they're going from their system out to something else. They're not often there to make the changes to that target system to accept that interface and make sure the data all arrives in the right format and all the rest of it. They're really just working from their system, either with information coming in or going out. It's actually the client that's accountable for the end-to-end operation of that integration or interface.
Yeah, and if you're implementing a system that affects the entire sort of enterprise architecture, and you're bringing in integrations and all sorts of different things, when we're talking about suppliers, you've got to engage the suppliers of those systems as well in your process, in your transformation. Because ultimately, you might have to make changes to those systems of records that you're integrating with. So it's not. They're there to receive a specification of what data do you want to go where, in what format, and frequency of it. And that's what they will do.
And on that topic of other vendors, there's the suppliers that provide your current services and systems that you perhaps are retiring. So you need to think through, well, let's read the contract before we think about talking to them about terminating it. What support do we need from them during the life of this program and beyond, and how do we make sure that we have the right commercial discussions at the right time to ensure that we get what we need and there's an equitable commercial arrangement that they're comfortable enough with, that they're going to do what we need them to do.
Yeah.
So that's something that can often get forgotten. Even during the business case phase, we make an assumption that we can switch off this system as soon as we go live, but hold on, we've got a contract that says, we owe them for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's important to think about not just the vendors to your program, but to the vendors of legacy systems and services that are being provided today.
I mean, we talked in about business case in previous episodes, and the need to be to be very clear about what you're trying to do, and total cost of ownership around systems and so on. Don't want to get too technical here, but one of the key things to think about when you're talking about vendors and particularly around technology is, if you're decommissioning a piece of software because you're implementing something else, be sure that you can decommission it, not just from a contractual perspective, but actually from a data standpoint.
Yeah.
Legacy data, and don't just assume that you can decommission something at the point that this new system goes live.
Yeah, because not all the data might be in it. You might need to access it.
Different data architectures, all sorts of different things that will prevent you from migrating that data set in its entirety. And then guess what? The assumption that you made in your business case that you were going to retire something won't happen.
Yeah.
So be sure that before you start talking about retiring systems in your business case, which is a previous episode, be sure that you can.
I think it's brilliant. Only you could take in a conversation about vendors and turn it into one about data. Complete geek. Just to get us back on track.
Yeah.
We talked about the internal program team.
You talked about integrations.
Yeah, in the context of implementation partners, I didn't start going on about legacy data. Good Lord.
You're listening to the Underscore Transformation Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Underscore, the transformation capability specialists. To find out more, visit underscore-group.com.
We've talked about internal program teams. We talked about management consultants. We've talked about implementation partners. Yes. We need to talk about client-side advisors.
Oh, important group.
Yes.
Important group. These can be your sounding board.
Yeah.
This can give you the voice, can be your voice of reason on your program.
Or at least bitter experience.
Yes, yeah. They'll probably be bitter, and they'll probably be asking really difficult questions. These are the individuals that the program team, not the program team, nor the vendor. Vendors probably like too much.
Yeah.
They dig beneath the surface. And this is not about picking holes in anything. This is really about their role is there to make sure that the program achieves what it's trying to achieve based on the experience that they've got.
But you can plug them in at different levels, can't you? So I think there's two options. You either plug them into the program team itself, so to the design authority, to the process owners, as that sounding board, as that external advisor that's talking to them about best practice, and you might be thinking you could do it that way, but here's the operational impact that I've experienced in company Y.
And they'll be that's where they'll have the most impact.
Yeah,
they'll have the most impact at that level. It's not in a huge amount of detail, but really helping shape thinking.
Yes, yeah.
Rather than, which is the other option, is to put them on an executive steering
so
committee.
It's either you plug them into the design boards and the design decisions, or you plug them in at a governance level at that, either operational steering committee, executive, well, not really operational, really executive steering committee, or program board sort of level. It's one of those two. It's either the program board or it's the exec steering committee.
And that could work. The challenge with just using that as a channel is that a lot of it's how do you influence design?
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of the design has probably been made. It does become a QA type role.
Yes, yeah,
which is important. And don't get me wrong, if I was a sponsor, I would look to have someone alongside me that understands the trajectory that we're going in and where trapdoors are likely to be, so that I can prepare myself and the program team and so on, and everybody around me about, what are the issues that we're likely to encounter.
But it's not an either or, is it? You
No,
can
no,
have somebody at the
both.
executive steering committee level,
and down.
and at the
Operational.
design level
yeah, you
that's
can do
bringing
both.
that real experience in. So you've got the person at the exec level asking those really horrible probing questions that as a program manager or as a transformation lead you just don't want someone asking.
Yeah.
So they're there to ask the difficult questions and to bring that external validation that what's being designed within the program is actually going to work.
Yeah.
But then the design teams have got that external perspective from a different individual that's helping them make those really well-founded design decisions. So the challenge that's coming in through perhaps an external advisor during the exec steerco are being well answered, if you like.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're not reliant on a really experienced individual just catching things at the exec steerco level. You've plugged in somebody potentially equally as experienced, but perhaps a bit more operationally focused, a bit more in the detail to make sure the things work effectively in that design space. So the final supplier is your new technology vendor.
Yes.
So what are they there to do?
Technology vendors are there to provide the technology.
Yeah.
They're not there to design your processes for you. They're providing technology as a service.
Yeah.
Here's a kit that I'm going to give to you. Use a system implementation partner to configure it as you wish within the constraints of the capabilities I'm giving you as technology. But that's all it is.
Yeah.
Clearly the technology vendors are designing things on best practice, on using lots and lots of customers to beta test certain designs. So they're always evolving their product to meet the latest sort of thinking around whether it's finance, procurement, or HR. But they are there to do. All they're there to do is to provide you a platform.
So they're there to provide that platform. They need to make sure that it's as bug free as it can be. That they're providing that third level support to you as a client, and that it gets enhanced in the right way. So as a customer of that vendor, really engaging with whatever their product development process is, whatever their user groups are. Even though we're talking about implementation right now, get involved now.
Early, influence the roadmap. And actually, if you're for large enterprises and for large corporations, technology vendors will be keen to get those individuals involved anyway.
Yeah.
To develop product, to help them develop their roadmap.
Yeah.
The technology vendors are also got a vested interest in this thing landing well.
Mm-hmm.
So they will often, in some cases, some technology vendors will play a role of sort of quality assurance, making sure that the system implementation partners are doing what they need to do.
Yes.
That they're making the right configuration design decisions in the system.
Yeah, they've followed the implementation process.
Absolutely.
They've ticked the right boxes.
Absolutely. But they're not there to make sure that you've done your change management. They're not quality assuring your program, let's be clear. They're not quality assuring the program. They're just quality assuring the fact that the technology is being configured in accordance with their criteria.
Yeah, and they're not quality assuring the design.
No, they're not quality assuring the design. So if you've got 7,000 lines of objects that you've created, they're not sitting there asking, are you sure you want to create 7,000?
Yeah.
When 20 would do, they say, okay, fine. If you've got 7,000, there must be a good reason for you to request 7,000.
Yes.
I'm not questioning that. I'm just going to make sure that the 7,000 have been configured and set up correctly in the system.
Yeah. And I think this is where your client-side advisors come in.
Yes.
They would be the ones that are saying, hold on, that's not quite right. No,
Yes.
You're going to have these issues in operation. It's going to be a nightmare to support. Actually, your reporting is going to be horrible.
Yeah.
It's that you're not going to get that from your technology vendor. You kind of really need to look at that from elsewhere. You can do without it. All that means is that you will get to the same solution eventually, but you'll learn it in production when everything's live in front of a live studio audience with the CEO looking at their payslip going, why is this not right? Yeah. And all those kind of fun things. So that's where the value comes in, is that you stand on the shoulder of giants wherever possible. So they're the kind of the nicely set out roles, but you've already touched on where a management consultant organisation can have an implementation partner, and being clear about where the differences are, and are you acting in the role of our management consultant or in the role of our implementation partner? Because even though the name across the door is the same, they're totally different teams, and a lot of these are partnership models, so they really don't talk to each other.
They're different individuals, and they are different teams, they are different individuals.
So be clear about what you're contracting for. But the other one is around vendors, technology vendors, because some of them have implementation teams.
Yes.
So you need to distinguish between, am I talking to you as a technology vendor or as an implementation partner?
Yeah, that's true.
And just make sure that you're clear about in what role and which individuals and how you're engaging, because it can be really easy to kind of get all that very muddled, and things break down quite quickly.
Yeah, we talked just earlier about this team charter. Call it out. Call it out. So if I've got if the technology vendor is my implementation partner, who do I go to influence roadmap? Yeah. Is it the guy standing in front of me who's doing the configuration, or is it someone else?
Yes. Yeah.
Be clear as to what your escalation points are in those situations. And likewise, if you're using a system implementer and a management consultant using the same brand, do the same thing.
Yeah.
Be sure that they are different teams, they are different individuals.
Yeah. And they'll often have different contracts.
Yeah.
They will have physically different contracts that need to be negotiated separately, and they're written very, very differently because they're fundamentally different services.
It's interesting though, isn't it? When management consultants, when organizations that engage the system implementer and the management consultant at the same time, contractually, and just be very mindful of how that would work.
Yeah.
There are some pitfalls along the way where that consultancy firm is accountable for delivering both.
Yes. Yeah.
Be sure that you stay on your side of the fence, client side. They've got plenty of QA and assurances and checks in place to make sure that everything's going accordance to plan.
Yeah. So when it comes to kind of managing these supplier relationships, I think one area that it can often come to a bit of a head, especially if you're a large and strategically important client to either a management consultant, an implementation partner, or a technology vendor, or in certain circumstances, all three. Yeah. Oftentimes they're very keen to play an active role in your governance structure. So to have individuals from those organisations sat on your executive steering committee, and it can be great, wonderful, Deloitte or KPMG or whoever, they're going to send a senior partner and they're going to sit on our exec steering committee. Isn't that great? But there are kind of pros and cons.
Yes, yeah. In a true spirit of collaboration, absolutely. Transparency and so on, it does have benefits.
Yeah, if you've got a problem with a particular vendor and they're sat on your exec steerco, they have to, stare at the whites of the eyes of their client and face into it.
Exactly, but it can be counterproductive in some areas.
Yeah,
you might have constraints on budget. When you start talking about financials of the program, never have these individuals involved in a room at that point.
Yeah, they have commercial drivers, and
that's right. So if they are part of your exec steerco, be sure that you segregate discussion to discuss program points and maybe financial points or business strategy points.
Yes, yeah.
That are driving the transformation that you perhaps don't want to be publicised and known externally outside the walls of the exec.
Yes, yeah, and you're often making significant changes to team structures, and numbers of employees will be affected.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
is it appropriate to have those discussions with an external party in the room?
Yeah.
So just I think absolutely include them in the right way, maybe as a separate forum.
Yeah.
with the executive sponsor, and give them access to the exec, because it's really valuable having those relationships at the executive level, but be mindful about those execs.
The role that they play in the governance of the program.
Yes,
that's the key, right? It's the exec steering committee is there to govern the program.
Yeah.
And to provide executive direction to the project and sign off and so on. There are different ways and different mechanisms of engaging them, and they absolutely need to have line of sight and a channel into the sponsor. It's vital.
Yeah.
The sponsor needs to feel they can pick up the phone and speak to somebody, one of their suppliers, and that relationship, that dialogue needs to, be encouraged.
Yes. Yeah.
But in a formal governance structure, I'd be reluctant to include them for the entire executive.
Yeah, for the entire meeting. Yeah. So we're going to touch on governance. Not touch on. We're going to have quite an in-depth discussion about governance in a future episode. I think it will be perhaps the last one that we touch on in this season. But we'll revisit this topic. So that's kind of your large, strategically important clients. At the slightly other end of the scale, your small to mid-size enterprises, they might not have enough budget to go out and engage a management consultancy to provide that input during design, or to sit on an exec steerco. If that's the case, what can organisations do where they don't have the budget to go to a management consultancy to get that input on design? What can they do?
Client advisors, isn't it? Get the client side advisor engaged with somebody that's been there, done it before, and then go out and get individuals that have been there, done it, to work alongside your program team who've probably not got experience in having done this before. And use that expertise.
Yes,
and there's plenty of expertise in the market without needing to go to
absolutely,
the big consulting firms.
Yes, yeah, and I think the other thing to do, and we've touched on it previously, is make sure your process owners go out and tap into their networks and go and visit other organisations, see what good looks like elsewhere, get ideas, give them space and time to actually go and do that work, do some reading, do some investigation, some research.
And client advisors can help unlock those types of exchanges. These individuals will have a network of themselves. Bring the client advisor to help you. Just make sure you stay on track and you don't do anything silly to hurt yourself.
Yes, yeah.
And can you leverage them to open opportunities and to network in other organisations, and that in itself will be valuable.
Yes, yeah. So I think if we just step through to how to get the best out of these suppliers, and I think the first thing to say is you actually have to proactively manage their performance, and you need to have checkpoints within your program to have commercial discussions that are beyond your day-to-day delivery of the project or program discussions. So you actually sit and you talk about performance and issues, risks, in terms of the commercial relationship. But it's always beneficial, wherever possible, to ensure that all parties involved in this phase of the program can see a path through to actually there's maybe some ongoing, this is a long-term relationship. There's some ongoing opportunity for revenue. There's an ongoing opportunity to continue working with these vendors, with you as a client, because obviously to the vendor there's a potential of future revenues that they want to secure, but also it really helps with trying to fix problems in the here and now. If the parties believe this is a one-time game, you're going to have a different set of behaviours than if they think this is going to be a repeat game where there's a value in the relationship beyond whether somebody's right or wrong on this particular point.
Yeah, and that needs to be set out way up front when you create your contract, your business case. Absolutely. These types of transformation programs rarely stop on day one.
Yeah.
Right, so there's always an opportunity to create a long-lasting relationship, and if you have we talked a little bit. We talked earlier about mentality and behaviors and these types of things. If you don't set those right up front, the relationship will end.
Yes.
Once you're live,
Yeah.
And the likelihood is that there'll be a contracting opportunity for support services, through live support for whatever it is that you're implementing, with potentially a different supplier.
Yes. Yeah.
Which adds, there's having that continuity is really, really helpful as you transition, as you embed what you've built. So having that long-lasting relationship is possible. So
Yes.
have the right behaviors throughout the program, because you're more likely to end up with something win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So as a program sponsor, one of the things you want to be looking at is, how does the program team talk about the different suppliers?
Yeah.
Are they taking kind of a transactional approach to the relationship?
Or a strategic one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
the sponsor has a role to sort of shape
absolutely.
that, because it's the sponsor. The sponsor may well have a vested interest in building that long-term relationship with our vendor.
Yes. Yeah. So if your program team is coming to you with every single missed milestone, every defect, and it's really breaking down into a them and us sort of dynamic,
you need to
really need to address that very quickly. Yeah. But that's not to say that the program team or the program manager that's managing that kind of day-to-day relationship with a project manager or program manager, depending on which level, they shouldn't be a soft touch.
No.
They shouldn't just accept every change in scope, in timeline, in cost. They shouldn't be signing every change request without question.
No. It's there's rules of engagement, right? So in a spirit of collaboration, yes, but we're still got commercial relationships between all the parties.
Yeah.
We mustn't forget that there's a contract to deliver a particular service, and it's not delivering a service at all cost.
Yes.
It's there's the spirit of working together, which is really, really important, but also understanding that there's a commercial relationship here as well, and we mustn't forget that.
Yeah. I think, again, this is where client-side advisors can come in, because if a program team is not fully versed with what it is they're doing, then having somebody that can constructively challenge change requests as they come in, you can end up with a much better solution.
Yeah.
Because it could be that the individual functional consultant, if we're talking technology here, has just thought about the solution in one way.
Yeah.
And the one way is just to apply a whole load of time to the problem, and that ends up with a quite sizable cost. Whereas somebody coming in from the outside with a fresh pair of eyes can say, well, hold on, you don't need to do it that way.
Yeah.
You could just make this change over here, and you know what? There's no need to put those extra hours in. Therefore, there's no cost change.
Yeah, and actually, the systems, the technology vendors will also appreciate the fact that there's somebody there, that client side, just being a voice of reason around change.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? The client advisor may well come in and say, yes, client, that could be a good thing, but actually the system's constrained by X, Y, and Z. And by the way, if you implement that, these are the consequences in your BAU.
Yes.
So think very carefully about what you're asking the technology vendor to do. So it's a role that can be positive in both sides of the camp.
Yes, yeah. It's one of the areas to look out for, isn't it? Is the change requests and the frequency that they're coming in, and
the validity
of them. Yeah, the validity, and also the balance between how many are we approving versus rejecting. And if you've got too many that you're approving or too many that you're rejecting, it suggests that you've got some problem somewhere in the relationship.
If you've got too
treat
many,
it as a warning sign.
If you've got too many change requests in the first place,
you haven't scoped the program properly.
Your original design is probably not quite right.
Yeah. Oh dear. So the final piece is really around making sure that you've got adequate time at the start of the relationship to scope out that statement of work with all the relevant people, and that you build in, especially with management consultants and implementation partners, plenty of time for knowledge transfer as you go, because in our shared view, the objective for all suppliers, as far as you can contractually put it in, is to ensure the client is as self-sufficient as humanly possible at the point of go live.
Yeah.
And unless you build that into your commercial negotiations and your contracting right up front, that's not the default.
No, that is it's an interesting one, because there can be a lot of ambiguity around sort of self-sufficiency, because the client will absolutely be expecting to be self-sufficient at day one, but naturally the way maybe technology gets implemented isn't aligned to that.
Yes.
And it's only at the very end, when knowledge transfer starts to happen, that a client starts to sort of take accountability for it. But it comes at a point quite close to go live where you don't have all the tools and all to support and sustain support the system.
Yes, yeah.
So build that into the contract, have it right up front, and find the mechanisms in place that allow you to be self-sufficient when this thing gets switched on.
Yeah. And if you haven't done so already, go back and listen to the previous episode where we were talking about the future support model and how important it is to start thinking about this stuff right now.
Yeah.
So we've covered off today quite a broad series of topics. So when we're talking about suppliers and getting the best out of them, first use them in the right way and make sure everyone in the program team is fully aware of everybody's role and different vendors, different suppliers and the program team, the different roles that there are and how they work together. Avoiding confusion if you've got suppliers fulfilling multiple roles on the program, how best to plug in different vendors at different levels of the organization, whether that's part of your governance or part of your design, and the different options that we've got there. Managing the performance of suppliers and how best to kind of focus on those long-term relationships, and some of the warning signs to look out for when it comes to change requests and the volume of them, and how many you're approving and turning down. And then the final piece is on knowledge transfer. So as ever, this is a huge topic. we could talk at much more length on this one, but
this weird topic, there's 10 episodes of itself.
Yes, but bearing in mind this is 10 key success factors in a transformation program that at minimum is going to last a year, so it's probably unsurprising that there's quite a bit to discuss. So next week, integrations and reporting. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. This episode focused on one of 10 critical success factors in the build phase of transformation. If you'd like to be at the front of the queue for next week's episode, please hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to like the show if you found it useful. To learn about the scoping phase of transformation, head over to Season 1 and look out for future seasons on transition and optimization. If you have any questions or opinions you'd like to share, please contact me, Jason West, on LinkedIn or via our website _group.com.